That's another thing that doesn't work so well when we're in a state of fight or flight.
Okay.
You know, and that state of feeling driven and stressed,
Yeah.
is that the mitochondria are less able to make energy effectively. They create more waste, and we are unable to therefore access the fat that we've stored in our bodies. So when we're in a state of fight or flight and our blood sugars become dysregulated, we're unable to use the fat that's stored in our bodies. So I think we have a lot of obesity that we're seeing these days. I think when people are stressed, it's very difficult for them to lose weight.
Welcome on the show, Dr. Ellismary. So great to have you. You're probably the happiest doctor that I've ever met, and the most inspiring too. We actually, I have to disclose, I have been your patient before, and it has changed my life. And I always look back at that time where I really needed it, and look forward to whenever things go wrong in my life, that you're there, just around the corner here in the Byron Shire in Australia. And I would love to chat to you about all sorts of things, and I know you have so much experience in so many different areas, so we probably wouldn't touch all of them. But thanks for coming. And I was wondering whether you could just explain a little bit like how you actually got into this whole field of, the overall topic, I guess, is chiropractic, but there's much more to it, correct?
Yeah, sure. I guess I feel like it's the highest privilege that I have is to help uplift people, to assist them to realize their limitlessness. Yes, I am a chiropractor, and I've been a chiropractor for 25 years, and for me the first time I ever had a chiropractic adjustment was totally life transforming because I was in terrible pain and unable to do my exams for year 12. So I went to a chiropractor and my mum said, "No, they're going to break your neck." But I went anyway, and within a moment I was completely resolved of my pain, and the chiropractor said to me, he said, "The premise of chiropractic is that the body is intelligent, and that the power that heals the body, and that the power that made the body heals the body. It happens no other way." And from that moment I was just spellbound. I was like, whatever it is that you do, I need to do that, because that's the most intelligent thing I'd ever heard anyone say. Because when I grew up, energy was what came out of the electrical plug to make my hairdryer work. I didn't know about consciousness. I was brought up in a very conservative family, and this was totally eye-opening. But really what they say is that when you receive a chiropractic adjustment, the interference, the flow of life force is restored, and I felt like I was turned on in that moment.
Wow. So the reason why you have already 20 years experience is because you started really, really early, directly after school.
Well, I was hoping to be a physiotherapist because I've always loved helping people, but as soon as I met this chiropractor in Melbourne, I was absolutely sold. It's like, well, I have to become a chiropractor then, because I want to do this. Yeah.
Awesome. And what exactly is chiropractic? What do you actually really do? Because the reason why I ask is because some people might not know, but also there are either different disciplines out there, and that's why people are not quite sure, or there are many different ways of looking at it.
Sure. Well, all chiropractors have a very clear intention with each adjustment. We're removing interference, the flow of intelligence through the nervous system. We call that innate intelligence. You could call it whatever you like. You could call it life force, you could call it God, but the consciousness streams through our bodies, it pours out our eyes. We are here, and that flow of life force can be impeded when we have structural distortions in the spine. So all chiropractors remove interference to the spine, and some of us have taken different roads, once having graduated and learned all of the physiology and the neurology and the biomechanics and the actual practice of how to deliver a chiropractic adjustment, which is like a manipulation, only very, very specific. And there are a lot of ways to provide that influence that input into the nervous system. Some people do it with their hands as a manual adjustment, where they actually make a neck make a sound, or the spine make a sound. I don't do that so much. I find that there are different ways to approach every different person and every different person's problem. So I tend to find that if I can create rapport with a patient, I'll intuitively know how to influence their nervous system in the most effective way.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I the work that I do is quite gentle, but yeah, it's profound. And my favourite thing is just to help people realise how amazing they are. You know, their bodies are so incredible. The intelligence that exists within the cell is just awe-inspiring.
Yeah. I remember talking. Actually, I know my mom as well as a really old friend. Both of them went when they were sort of in the 40s. My mom actually when she was in the 50s to a chiropractor, and they adjusted it to a way that they did something to the hip, and suddenly it popped open, and you know they feel so much better and can move so much better. And both of them had experience of falling down the table when they were a baby, the changing table. And I don't quite get it. So how can it be that this gets somehow locked and broken for so long, from baby onwards? And then what does the chiropractic actually do to unlock this so gently? Like, it sounds, to me, it's absolutely magic. I've seen it working on myself as well, you know, heard it quotes from other people, but I don't quite get how that actually would work.
Well, it does seem like magic, especially when you come to my practice. Because I'm quite a magical being. However, essentially I'm a neuroscientist. All chiropractors are neuroscientists. And we have learned enough about how to influence our neurology so that we can alter the mechanics sufficiently to create new pathways and new relationships between the joints, improving the mechanics of the whole spine. Just because someone presents with a neck pain doesn't mean that I'm going to go and work necessarily at the neck, because the whole body is this perfect closed system where every joint affects every joint. I mean, within the body, every single cell is able to communicate with every single other cell in the body, just like every neuron has a communication with every other neuron. So when I choose to input the nervous system with an adjustment, I'm doing it with a certain level of intelligence and definitely have a very clear intention that my job is to perfect the mechanics of that person's vehicle, I guess. I like to call it the perfect human vehicle.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. I've never thought about it that way, but if I think about a computer, there are lots of, you know, physical things in there that, you know, have to function right. But when there's something wrong with the computer, you normally don't just pull out all the chips and put new chips in it. You actually change the software. There's a software update, you know, or a correction of stuff. So would you say that that's what goes through the body? The body is more the mechanical, you know, vehicle, as you said, and then you sort of tweak the software a little bit to align again of where it should be?
This is kind of a challenging question for me because I actually believe, and this might be beyond some of the people who are listening, I believe that we're always receiving new software, and that when we remove interference to the nervous system, we are opening up to the ability to master the newest software. I'm sure that these human bodies were made perfect. They were designed perfectly. You know, there are the same number of vertebrae in a giraffe as in a mouse, and the same in a human. We're all built on the same basic blueprint, if you like. Yeah. And it was made perfect. Unfortunately, you know, there are things in our lives that compromise not only our mechanics, but our ability to have good, healthy relationships with our bodies. And so part of my work is to help people to recognise all the drivers of stress so that we can not just improve their mechanics, because chiropractic for me is much more about restoring perfect function of the nervous system. And improving people's lives, helping them to really realise how powerful they are.
So in what you're saying, you in another way say that we are responsible for everything that sort of happens. If we're perfect, right, then the only way you could really impact that perfectness, the only one who's that much in the driver to compromise the perfectness, must be ourselves in quite to quite an extent, hey?
Yeah, I like to imagine that we are intelligent charioteers of this amazing body.
Yeah.
And it's only really when we realise that our bodies reflect our beliefs about them and our relationships with them impeccably. So everything that happens, all the symptoms that we experience in our bodies are not just bad luck. People don't just get sick for no reason. And I think that the fundamental place where we can, or interface, I guess, where we can improve the function of our bodies is at the point of our relationship with ourselves. And if you don't mind, I'd just like to continue, because the intelligence of the cell is profound at the level of the cell. I mean, we have at least 100 trillion cells that make our bodies, you know, and the nervous system performs 6 trillion actions per second. Wow. This is a profoundly intelligent system we have the privilege to incarnate into. But what I recently have been sharing with my clients is that the membrane of the cell, the outer capsule, if you like, of the cell, these cells are invisible. If it's not miraculous enough for you already, that 100 trillion invisible cells somehow make up this visible body that you and I are, that already is just awe-inspiring for me. But the only visible cell is the neuron, because it's so long. The brain cells, some of them go all the way from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. They're the only visible cells in the body. But the outside, the cell membrane of the cell contains between 10 million and 100 million receptor sites for every substance that travels into and outside of that invisible cell.
Holy cow.
I know, isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And every cell contains within it a whole lot of what we call organelles, which are little organs inside the cells. And every cell has its own digestive system, its own waste elimination system, its own control system, like a nervous system, its own immune system, its own energy production system, all inside these cells that are invisible to the naked eye. There is so much intelligence at the level of the cell. And I think it's very empowering whenever we get stuck in thinking, oh, everything's bad, and you know, there are all sorts of challenges in life, and sometimes we really focus on what's going wrong in our lives. I think one of the most empowering things we can do is to spend a moment. If you can't control your mind to still it, at least use your mind so that you're choosing to think thoughts that make you feel good, right?
Yeah.
So if you're ever stuck or lost, or you're in traffic maybe right now, then you can just spend a moment to choose to think about the awe, about the intelligence that is existing inside us all the time. You know, even if we get drunk or we're asleep, our heart's still beating. Those cells, they do not sleep. They don't rest, you know? And every cell has like this perfect relationship with all the other cells within that same tissue or organ. They're cooperating all the time. None of them goes, oh, I'm just going to go to the beach today and have a rest, you know? They're always working for us. Yeah. So if you're ever feeling a little lost, one easy thing to do is just feel gratitude for that. And what is it? What is it that is the intelligence that makes it all happen, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like we're not necessarily intelligent charioteers all the time, are we?
Yeah, and sometimes contrast helps, I guess, you know, to see, to appreciate when things go right and so on, so there's a place for that.
Yeah, contrast always helps us grow, right?
Exactly, yeah. I always say success is a poor teacher. You know,
yeah.
I mean, you know,
and failure is a really good one.
Yeah, not my favorite, but it does help it. Hey, that's amazing, because if that is so, you know, there are quite a few studies that, many studies that the mind has an impact on living plants, on materials and so on, and especially when you go really small, you know, like when you go to the quantum level, it's really obvious to see that the observer really has an impact on how something plays out. So when you say that these cells are so small, for me, it's easier to imagine how that means I actually influence my own body by what I think and what I experience, because they're so small that they actually, the subtlety will be picked up.
I'm so delighted that you've led this conversation in this direction, because I actually study quantum physics, and I have to say that everything that we've ever wanted to know about how it's possible that spontaneous, miraculous healing can occur exists within the principles of quantum physics.
Wow.
It is miraculous. I was talking about how tiny these cells are.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what we look at. In quantum physics, what we're doing is we're studying the behaviour of the smallest particles known to man. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and quantum physics was actually, or the term quantum mechanics, was created over 100 years ago now.
Wow.
Yeah, by some remarkable physicists. Max Planck is well known to be a part of that. But when we look inside a cell, let's say, and we take an electron microscope and look deeper into that cell, essentially what we find is that we're made of atoms. And atoms are like little solar systems. I love that because they say so above, so it is below as well. And it's just like that. The deeper we go into the substance that we are formed from, the more expansive it actually becomes. If we take an electron microscope then and look inside the most dense part of an atom, it's the proton, what we find is that we're actually, what it contains is 99.9999999% empty space.
Wow.
Which means that we have limitless potential to influence
Because we're
our lives and our biology, our neurology, our reality. It's so exciting.
Wow.
I love sharing that with my patients. That is a moment I often say, okay, now you can go, the healing's done. You know now everything you need to know to be healthy. Because we also know that humans are supposed to be the only species that can imagine itself into a state of physiological distress just by thinking about something that might never even happen in the future. I'm sure all of us do this. I mean, all of us do this every day, right? We think about a future that might not go so well, and we actually play a role, we know now, in manifesting that future when we go there, because wherever we bring our focus, that's where energy and attention goes to. But if humans are the only beings or species, and I'm not sure that that's correct, because I know that when I take the dog to the vet, she knows what's coming. I know. But if humans can imagine themselves into states of distress physiologically and change their neurology and the chemicals they're making in their brain and change their biochemistry, which is my passion, biochemistry, influencing the chemicals and the hormones that we're creating, then it means that we are very the thoughts that we choose to think influence our lives. Absolutely. We have all the science that we need to know that that's true. So when we choose to think thoughts that make us feel good, that influences our biology positively. And that's so exciting. That's free.
Wow. You love biochemistry, so I'm sure it's somehow related to that. So when looking at like work from Bruce Lipton, for example, what he would say is that because your thoughts influence the pH of your blood and you know, and other fluids in your body, therefore that's the environment that the cells really live in, and that pH would change certain things. Is that sort of the way that you get to the cells and communicate to it, or is it actually really electronically or?
Oh, okay, well there are two things here.
Okay, all right.
One, what's happening is, sure the pH changes, but really what's happening is that the electrical environment within and without the cell, on the inside and the outside of the cell changes. The sodium and magnesium pumps actually influence the electricity. So every cell in the body is essentially a battery that switches on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off. And it's not like every cell contains a lot of energy and can store a lot of energy. Human beings are amazing channels of life force, particularly when they're free from interference. It's a little plug for chiropractic. But all of our cells are like little batteries. If you add up Bruce Lipton actually talks about each cell containing 3 hertz of electrical energy. I think that's not what everybody has discovered now. However, regardless how much electrical energy is in each cell, when you multiply that by the 100 trillion cells that we have, we are electrical beings. And as a result, we have an electrical field. Yeah. So there's been a lot of evolution, and there's, spirituality has become kind of a chic kind of, how would you say? Like it's become popularized. We're talking at the dinner table mostly, or some of us, about yoga and people talk about their chakras. I think it's really time for us to become more cognizant of the reality that we have an electrical field around our bodies. It is measurable. The electrical field of the heart. I mean, the heart beating is a vibration, and it creates a field that is bigger than anything else in our electrical field. And so, we're challenged these days by things like 5G and all these man-made frequencies that influence our health apparently adversely. But I really believe that as we become masters, of choosing to think thoughts that make us feel good and realizing that we're actually the intelligent charioteer if we choose to be, if we become more cognizant of the field that's around us and become good at keeping that field clear by going outside, by being barefoot on the ground, by rolling around on the ground, if you like, by going to the beach, by swimming in the ocean. There are so many things that we naturally love to do that clear our field. I never regret going to the beach, do you?
No.
Sometimes it's hard to get there.
Yes.
Yeah. But when I do get in the water and I come out, I feel different. The environment, like a beach, like at the beach and in nature, there are all these negative ions. They sound like they should be bad things, right? Because they're negative.
Yeah, never thought about that. Yes, but yeah.
But in truth, what happens is that the negative ions influence the free electrons. Oxidative stress occurs because of free radicals. And free radicals bind to negative ions. And so the negative ions clean them out. So there's actually a reason why we feel good when we go to the beach. It's because we're getting all those electrons that are scattered, and don't have a home. They kind of just get removed, and we become more centered.
Yeah.
And then we become more clear, and then we become more connected to the earth, and that's always good. People seem to make good decisions when they've got a good relationship, not just with their bodies, but with the earth, right?
Yeah. It's a bummer that most people live in cities then, I guess.
Yeah.
It's certainly much easier than to actually get into the state of appreciation, into the state of feeling well and wellness when you are in these spaces. But what you're saying is also that actually those spaces, like the beach, for example, have that to offer, that they actually bind the free radicals.
Yeah.
And therefore, the body changes because of that as well.
Yeah. I think humans think themselves to be somehow separate from the rest of nature, But we actually belong here. And nature supports us. There is an infinite stream of life force that's available in nature that I don't necessarily feel when I'm sitting in front of my computer next to my modem on my phone. And, I guess you could call it the elixir of life. Life force is the elixir of life, and it's free. Again, it's free, right? And when I go outside and I set the intention to reconnect with the earth, and I pay attention to the plants that are in my garden like they're alive, like, oh, sweetheart, you want some water? Yeah, great, let's be together, I'll serve you. And Mother Nature serves us. She's here to provide us the life force that makes it possible for our flesh and blood bodies to have the energy that we need to do all the things that we love to do.
I think when, in the 1800s, I guess it was, the Newtonian thinking came in of separation, like separating everything, pulling everything apart and separating us from nature. There was a great contrast to appreciate that we're actually not like that, but for over 100 years, that was the main thinking, and still, to quite a degree in certain professions is, and that actually, I guess, the conventional medical field is still, well, it's waking up, but overall uses that approach, which is the approach that we agreed, it seems, to do. But the problem with that is that we don't think we are part of this, and actually, in a sense, I mean, what I hear more and more is like, this is all consciousness, so this is actually not really real. This is like consciousness, which means like air in empty space is just the same as matter. Which means that we are just the same as the wooden wall behind me, or
Absolutely.
And I actually remember lying. I don't know why, but I was really happy one day, and I was lying down, falling asleep, and I was thinking about, I actually respect every atom around me right now.
Oh, that's lovely.
It was amazing. It wasn't a really weird experience because I felt one with everything else, and everything became really watery, and I just realized that wherever I have also consciousness that says, I am I, at the end of the day, everything I am is also the same and is equally important than everything else around me. It was a very, very beautiful feeling, and it really put me in ease to think that way about, the environment, the world.
Isn't it great? There are so many things that we can choose to think that put us in ease. And there are so many things that we can do that help us to feel connected and centered. Because that state of being centered, it goes along with a physiological state that we call the parasympathetic function. because the nervous system can function in one of two ways and never in both at the same time. So parasympathetic function allows rest and digest. It controls everything that's important for the regeneration of a body. We integrate information effectively when we're in a state of rest and digest. And it goes along with a state of being centered. I like to call it calm. Calm for me stands for centered, aware, loving, and magnetic. Because is it not true that when you feel centered like that synchronicities occur? And whatever it is that you want seems to come more easily into your environment, you know? But this state of being centered is actually the state where we access our limitless potential. This is the state where we become effective co-creators of our lives. However, most people spend about 80% of their time in the opposite neurological state, which also has an influence on our thinking as well. So I call that the opposite. It's at the state of sympathetic function. So sympathetic starts with S, and so does stress. So I find that easy to remember.
Great.
S for sympathetic and S for stress. So parasympathetic means other than stress in Latin.
Okay, yeah, of course.
So the sympathetic nervous system controls stress. It controls our ability to adapt to our environment effectively in that moment. And in that moment, everything else, all of the parasympathetic function, effectively, most of it, needs to turn off. So when we're in a state of what I call distress, which stands for being distracted. I know that when I'm stressed out, I'm too distracted to be present with my children in front of me, or too distracted to be present with myself, or with my breath, or what it is that I'm thinking. So distress for me reflects the sympathetic nervous system function, but I notice it in myself. I'm distracted, I'm irritated, I'm vexed, I'm blaming or I'm judging, I'm feeling exhausted usually, and I'm in a spiral of negativity. So when I find myself distracted, irritated, vexed, exhausted, or negative, I realise that I'm in a state of physiological distress. And what happens then is, one, I lose my ability to consciously co-create my reality. But secondly, my digestion is compromised. I imagine, if a person were being chased by an Alsatian down the road, in that moment, they are not thinking about what to cook for dinner tomorrow night. Right?
No.
They are actually not able to even access the higher centres of their brain when they're in that state of fight or flight. The frontal lobes are the privilege that we have of being human. Children take until they're 28 to fully develop their frontal lobes.
28?
Yeah. And the frontal lobes allow us all sorts of amazing abilities, like the ability to step back and view our lives from a distance. To step back and go, the consequence of me doing or thinking this is that, so perhaps I'll change it next time. We can't do that when we're in a state of distress, a state of physiological stress or fight or flight. But the higher centres of the brain, the prefrontal lobes, also, we know, drive humans to seek some sort of transcendent source of consciousness, which you could call God, right?
Yeah.
So when we are in fight or flight, we lose our connection with Source. And that's very important. But also we lose our ability to regenerate ourselves effectively, because it's more important to be able to survive the Alsatian in that moment than it is to regenerate new cells. So also our immune system is compromised when we're living in states of perpetual fight or flight. So our digestion is compromised as well. Our relationship with self is altered. Our relationship with the world is altered. Our breath is altered, and that influences a lot as well. Like the air is full of prana.
Yeah.
So,
wow, mate, we really should have a ministry of sort of happiness, or a ministry of consciousness, just so that we make sure that we are in that state, because that's good for for the whole country. That's good for the whole world. There should be really a stronger and more direct move towards getting people into the right state. I mean,
absolutely.
Our saunas, they put people in the parasympathetic, or they assist people to go into the parasympathetic state, because it is sort of like a womb light, nice and warm. It's a good frequency and all the rest of it. But there are so many other things that you can do too. And it doesn't have to be necessarily a sauna. You don't have to go anywhere, because it just takes a couple of breaths, and a conscious, I guess, decision.
Yes.
If you want to go back into that state of parasympathetic.
I love the idea of having a ministry for that. Wouldn't it be wonderful if there was a government ministry for happiness, something like that, and for all of this? But I really think that now that we have access to the internet, we have the ability to seek information that serves us, which is so exciting. It's a very exciting
it's
time.
amazing. Yeah.
And we've just created the Byron School of Energy, which will be a platform for people to be able to come to and get tips on how to reconnect with source, how to recover from stress, what the drivers of stress are, really easy ways to be able to return home to centre so that we can remember our mastery and become conscious creators of our lives.
And it's a school of energy because that's really the first principle and the underlying fabric of how this all happens.
We're all energy.
Yeah.
We are electrical energy. We are, I guess you could call it source energy, streaming through bodies that are conduits. And what I do in my work is I help people to become the most profound channels of life force possible. The most perfected conduits for life force, so that we have plenty of energy to give and to do our work with, and we become like transmitters, more effective transmitters of whatever it is that we're here. Our own unique gift gets transmitted when we channel lots of energy through our systems. It's all right. It's all right. It's all right.
So, and light really has a renaissance at the moment. I think like people really realize that the mitochondria of it, like the center of the cell of powers, actually really benefits from being in the sun or being exposed to certain frequencies of light and so on. Isn't that amazing?
That's another thing that doesn't work so well when we're in a state of fight or flight.
Okay.
And that state of feeling driven and stressed is that the mitochondria are less able to make energy effectively. They create more waste, and we are unable to therefore access the fat that we've stored in our bodies. So when we're in a state of fight or flight and our blood sugars become dysregulated, we're unable to use the fat that's stored in our bodies. So I think we have a lot of obesity that we're seeing these days. I think when people are stressed, it's very difficult for them to lose weight because the mitochondrial function gets compromised. It starts to work like it works when on a biochemical level, like when people have cancer. There's a whole lot of waste that gets produced instead, and so then the body has to do something with that waste, but then it gets compromised and it's a downward spiral.
Wow.
So, again, get less stressed. Do what you can, whatever you can.
So you see people with all sorts of problems, right?
Yeah.
What would you say is at the moment sort of the flavor of the year or the flavor of our generation that you see?
Yeah, I would say it's a flavor of this generation.
Yeah.
I would say that 80% of the clients that come to me because they have the trifecta. And the trifecta is anxiety, depression, and exhaustion.
That has been really interesting and really uplifting, as you do with your being always. I have actually 3 questions that I haven't told you before, but because they are actually, just your part of how you think, it will be really easy to answer those, and they are. If there's one thing that you enjoy the most and that gets you up every day, what would that be?
I love that question. To actually only find one thing is the challenge, If there was one thing, repeat the question, if there was one thing...
That is the reason why you get up every morning. What would it be?
It's to awaken people to their limitlessness.
Yeah.
It's to realise my own limitlessness. It's the same thing, really, isn't it? Yeah, and to transmit love. Yeah.
And more on a practical level, what are the 3 things that you just absolutely enjoy doing in life? I'm sure that would be probably one of them.
Yeah. I just really love being in nature.
Yeah.
That's one of the main things. And it doesn't matter where it is, but I have it in my garden just as one little place where I like to sit. And it's just a regular garden. But in that one place where I like to sit, it's just like they've got good energy there or something, I've been sitting there now for years. Every morning I get up, I actually water the plants, I wet my feet, because water is an amazing conductor of electrical energy, right? We're electrical, and I've been in bed lying down and Wi-Fi and all of that. So once I wake up, I spend that first 20 minutes of my morning, because our brainwave pattern is different for the first 20 minutes of waking.
All right.
And for the 20 minutes while we fall asleep as well. We're highly influenceable. It's a perfect time to listen to something you've recorded, perhaps. I record things all the time, like, I'm so excited to be alive today, and I'm really looking forward to feeling as good as I possibly
Yeah.
can today and helping as many people as I can, that's the time of day where I will just switch on my phone and I will listen to that kind of thing because I know it influences me. So that's one of my favourite things is intending. But as soon as I go outside, I water the garden, I wet my feet, I jump up and down, I connect my palms, my hands, my feet to the earth, all in this one place. And you know what's happened? In that one little place of my garden, there is a circle of clover. Isn't that amazing? It is so beautiful there. So I go there, I sit under the moon. I'm a bit of a hippie, right? Yeah, and I go there, I put my crystals there. I am really sounding like a hippie now. But I do.
Well, just because science hasn't caught up, that's it.
No, well, it has caught up. That's the thing. 100 years ago, it caught up. Quantum mechanics. If you don't know anything about it, go check it out. Yeah. There's a great course. It's called Quantum for Everybody.
Yeah.
I think it's by the Georgetown University. It's either a free course or maybe it's $50.
Yeah.
Quantum for everyone. It's just quantum mechanics, quantum physics at the level that's really understandable.
Yeah.
So, get on board with the latest science and realise your limitlessness.
You're such a geek, but I think it's a good thing.
Oh, I'm definitely a geek. I'm not sure if I answered those questions. I love nature, I love intention, and I love food.
Oh, right, you do.
I love food. Yeah, I have a nutrition-based practice because I love helping people to choose to eat food that makes them feel good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, energy in. Where we're sitting right now used to be a Steiner school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the teachers there once said to me, you know, when a child's behaviour is erratic, we need to have a look at all of the different sorts of energy that we're putting into that child, because that child is now expressing kind of a chaotic energy. So look at what goes into that child, how we're influencing that child, but also how we're feeding that child, how are we feeding ourselves.
Yeah.
And you know, that principle of embodiment is impossible unless we start to refine our relationship with ourselves.
Right.
And our relationship with everything that we put into our body, including food.
Have you written a cookbook yet?
Well, I would love to write a cookbook. But yeah, essentially it's about the relationship you have with food, you know? And the relationship that you have with yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
So about the relationship, not actually the food itself.
Yeah, well, you know, I've heard from some of the amazing teachers that I've sat with that if you chant the name of God, whatever name you like, whatever word you want to use there instead, that it alters the frequency of the food that we eat, and that's a good thing. So if you ever have to go, you know, eat someone's lamb chops and you're not quite sure if they were grown up in a beautiful environment and killed with intention or not, and that influences our bodies, doesn't it? What we eat and the consciousness of what we eat, all those de-beaked chickens, then at least you could, I don't know, say the name of God, or you could feel grateful for gratitude's amazing, huh? Gratitude and awe. So I love food.
Got one more for you?
Yeah.
So why do we exist?
Oh, you're going to have to give me a moment on that one.
Yeah.
You might actually have to give me a lifetime.
If that is enough. But
why? I don't think that it's possible to know why. I think that we do exist.
Why do you like to think? What do you like to think why we exist? Is that a better question? Like, you know, what would be a good... Yeah, you're right. Like, we, of course we can't know, but...
I think existence, this sounds really like...
Yeah, well, it's a type of a question, right? You know, your answer should not be scientific as such.
Okay, well, existence is, therefore it has always been. Therefore, it will always be. So even though we have all these challenges around our, you know, our economics and our government and our environment, when I feel distressed, I just reflect on the bigger picture. Yeah, that actually the earth will be fine even if we're not here. And I really believe that it's true, and I'm getting really cosmic now, that many, many civilizations of different sorts of beings have lived on the planet before. They're finding all sorts of ancient relics from times really...
Not only on Earth either,
Oh really? Tell me about that.
You know, when you look at sort of what NASA has released, they have released some pictures they had to because there has been 20 or 50 years, I can't quite remember, and how they have blacked out certain things, but then have forgotten that those certain things had a shadow and the shadow is still there. And you go to NASA website and you say, oh, this is interesting, it looks like a shadow of a building, but then the actual, where the building should be, it's blurred out. I mean, I don't know, and I don't know what that means, but I believe, life is always everywhere. Like, you know, we saw that the energy that makes up our body surely can exist in many different environments, so why not? I really feel sure that we have incarnated into bodies.
and that I don't come from here. I'm not an earthly being, that I haven't always been here. It just feels very true for me. It's kind of cosmic. But that's my truth. My daughter, who's Indigenous, she says, I've been here since the beginning of time.
Wow.
And I know that that's what she believes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well, and because she believes it is true, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So existence is. It is what you make it. I'm here to uplift as many people as I can and enlighten them to the limitless potential for their lives and for their physiology. And it's been so nice talking to you.
Yeah, same. Yeah, you definitely have lifted up me, and I would love to talk to you again if you have time again. I'd love to bring you in because there's so many other topics that I could talk to you for sure.
I would love that. I look forward to it.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.